So help me fucking God, the day that we finally start getting our heads out of our ass will be the day that pigs fly using devices made of their own volition, and this will be the closest we're ever gonna get to a society worth a fuck. Let me just read this shit. Woman convicted of offending migrant gang rapists receives longer prison sentence than the rapists. Right. Yeah. Your ears do not fucking deceive you. Your eyes are not fucking bullshitting you. That is the actual name of the goddamn headline. That is the name of the headline of this fucking abomination. Keep in mind, this is supposed to be Germany, one of the countries that's had one of the most brutal and horrific histories within the past 2 centuries of any country on the planet. And for some reason, rapists got off light because someone offended some of them. I just want the world to know that if anyone wonders why I kind of seem like a cynic asshole at times, it's shit like this that kind of just aids in eroding my faith in the human fucking race. Because every time I want to have a little bit of hope for the goodness of our species, shit like this fucking happens. And makes me just want to say fuck all of you because people like this exist. Like no joke. It seems like for everything I see that makes me happy and makes me develop a little bit of more faith in our species, something comes along just to remind you that, hey, turns out our species is a rancid boil on the planet's asshole that would be better off getting scraped off with a fucking supernova or a black hole. And then we kind of have to just look at this shit and think, wow, people like this actually fucking exist. There are situations like this that actually occur where the people who are justifiably ridiculed, lambasted, and hated by the public are treated with kid gloves because the person that refuses to skirt around their feelings is saying things about them that hurt their feelings, while they did something far worse and far more unforgivable to someone that was even less deserving of the treatment they fucking received. Which, to be honest, the treatment they received is light. Honestly. I'm just gonna say my opinion about this before we get started reading this shit. If I had my way, the people convicted who were guaranteed to have done it would have received a death sentence. Okay? I'm sorry to the people that think that's a little bit brutal, but let's be honest. The people that do the shit that these pieces of garbage did to that person that we're about to read about in the article deserve death. Because there's no forgiving someone that does shit like that. Because they are well aware what they're doing is destroying this person's life possibly forever. Traumatize them to the point of where they might never be who they would have been had this not happened to them. And I don't have sympathy for any little pissant that's going to show up and cry about what I'm saying about these assholes. Because realistically, the same people that would defend these pieces of garbage are the same people that would probably do this horrific shit to someone else themselves. So fuck these people. Fuck these people and the feelings of the people who committed this fucking act, and fuck anybody who would ever try to justify it. So with that little introduction out of the way, let's read this horrible shit. Alright, here we go. A 20-year-old woman in Hamburg, Germany has been sent to prison for making, quote, hateful remarks towards a migrant who was involved in the gang assault. I'm not going to say the actual word when reading this, because I know that if I do, YouTube's basically going to walk up with a fucking hammer and bash me in the fucking head. Like, remember, they'll allow predators on their platform and won't allow actual means to report them, because the means that they offer to report them don't really do shit to really get rid of them or try to hinder their ability to approach children. But remember, if you say the R word in here, well, actually, you could say one of 2 different R words in this fucking platform, and they'll literally walk up behind you and bash you about the head with a fucking hammer. Because their only way to, like, make it so that you can't be against their policies, even if their policies only defend people that don't deserve defense. Hateful remarks towards a man who gang assaulted of a child. The woman is just one of 140 people being investigated for making, quote, harmful comments towards the assaulters, I'm gonna say. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine having a government that's so fucking shitty that they will allow people to cry about being called horrible things for doing something completely fucking horrendous to someone that didn't do shit to them to deserve it. Can you just fucking imagine that? Living in a country where the government and police force are so ass backward and busted that their biggest concern is the fact that you hurt the feelings of a sexual abuser, but not the fact that the victim will forever be traumatized and probably damaged mentally for the rest of their life from it. And your biggest concern is whether or not someone says mean words to the person or people who perpetrated the crime, but not for the fact that they would most likely deserve far worse than what they're getting. Seriously, fuck whoever defends these assholes. I understand they deserve a trial by a jury of their peers. I'm not against a fair trial. But I'm against it when people actively act like a person being a certain ethnicity or a certain background, whether it be culturally, religiously, or what have you, miraculously means that they deserve protection from mean words when they've done something fucking horrific. This is fucking disgusting. The horrific assault took place in 2020 and involved multiple groups of migrant men independently attacking a 14-year-old girl in Hamburg Strad Park over the course of one night. This gets sadder and sadder when you fucking look at it. The park had become a popular hangout spot for youth during the pandemic. I'm not going to read the name of the virus because if I do, YouTube will cry. And the girl had been there drinking with her friends. Yeah, she shouldn't have been drinking, but it's not my place to say it. I don't believe that someone drinking underage means that they deserve that, because they don't. A firm talking to, maybe a fine, maybe being taken home to their parents and explain that they were drinking underage, that would have been sufficient. She did not deserve any of this. I'm sorry if I'm kind of getting emotional here, but like, what this person went through is one of the worst things a human being can ever fucking experience. And the law enforcement, I'm sure the officers that arrived care, and they were just as troubled and disturbed by it as passersby would have been when they found out what was happening. But the fact is, law enforcement should have been allowed to make the judgment call on whether or not these people deserve to go free, not some bullshit where it's like, well, I'm from different countries, so that means that my actions don't matter. Fuck off. But they became scattered after police swept the park and broke up in groups while enforcing social distancing measures. One thing I'm trying to figure out though, like, where was everyone else at? Like, where were all of her friends? Like, even if you're standing 6 feet apart, that's only 6 feet. You should be within eye shot and earshot of your friends if something's happening. I mean, even if the police are sweeping the park, the best thing to do would have been to at least make small groups and like the buddy system. I mean, anything, I guess, could have helped here. Let's see, confused and alone, the girl was defenseless against the mob of 4 predators. Okay, so there were 4 people that attacked initially. The men took turns. I'm not even sure if I can actually read this without getting fucking upset. Repeatedly assaulting her over an extended period of time, they robbed her of her wallet and cell phone before leaving her. Traumatized and disoriented from the first attack, and having no method of calling for help, the girl was assaulted a second time by 2 more men who took advantage of her vulnerable state. So, literally, it was like 2 people just walked by, saw her like this, and immediately did the worst things a person could ever do to someone. Remind me again why these pieces of shit are allowed to roam the streets? Seriously. Why? Like, even during the pandemic, there were definitely things that could have been done to be a more watchful eye. Disturbingly, her assailants had begun inviting other men to assault her via their group chats, gleefully sharing the news that there was an isolated teenage girl in the dark park with no potential witnesses. This is why, like, I'm just gonna say it. Anyone that was in that fucking group that was openly showing to have interest or coming to the park that they could confirm was there deserves a death sentence. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. They deserve a fucking death sentence. The moment they decide to get involved instead of call the police and notify them this is happening, that right there should have been immediately reason enough for these assholes to get an electric chair. There is no justification for this, regardless of what some asshole's gonna make up. The child was attacked a third time by a single man, and then a fourth time by 3 more men who dragged her into a bush and assaulted her. Fuck everyone that did this. Fuck all the pieces of shit that did it. Like, I don't give a fuck about offending anyone because this is fucking retarded. And it's retarded because law enforcement has handled it with such a light touch fucking approach to what these people did to this fucking kid. Like, she's 18 now, since it's been 4 years. Or if not, then 17, depending upon when her birthday falls on. But the fact is, this person's going to spend the rest of their life wanting to avoid any area where they're going to be alone, because this is going to be one that it's never going to go away for them. It's never going to be something that they can ever really get over. Even if their trauma will eventually become manageable for them, she's never going to be able to be who she would have been. Finally, the child managed to break away and run, though pursued by her assaulters. So basically, she's running around, most likely beaten, bruised, and obviously assaulted, with a bunch of grown men following her. Eventually, she came across people who recognized her traumatized state and immediately called the police. Thank whoever found her. Thank you for finding her and helping her with whatever bit you could. A total of 11 men were initially charged, but 2 were acquitted quickly due to lack of DNA evidence. Who gives a fuck? They were still following her. If someone's been assaulted by a dozen or so people almost, do you think the last 2 weren't going to do it, despite the fact they were actively chasing her? The last 2 weren't going to get her help. They were most likely going to take their fucking turn. How shitty does your police work have to be that you can't put 2 and 2 to fucking together? No wonder you guys lost World War II. You're completely fucking incompetent if you don't have like a dozen or so assholes to do the work for you. The DNA of 9 of the men, however, was successfully recovered from the girl's body. Okay, so they had 9 people that they could place were directly responsible for the assault. 5 of the men in possession of German passports. Okay, so 5 of them were citizens. What about the other 4? Well, the remainder were not citizens of Germany. Among those charged, none of German heritage. The assaulters were identified as a Pole, an Egyptian, a Libyan, a Kuwait, an Iranian, an Armenian, an Afghan, a Syrian, and a Montenegrin. Yeah, so it's like a grab bag of fucking troublemakers. Not saying they're all troublemakers just because of their race, but I'm saying that usually cultures like that, more or less, they denounce and disregard the suffering of people who go through that kind of shit. And they more or less kind of normalize it in some of their fucking cultures. The man had a team of 20 defense attorneys arguing their innocence. What the fuck is the innocence? What exactly is the cause for innocence here? I'm sorry we didn't know that she was resisting and didn't want this. Like, is that the fucking argument? Like, I understand the defense attorney's point is just to be able to argue defense to a reasonable doubt. To see whether or not their client couldn't have done it. But if your client is literally covered in scratches and shit from someone trying to resist being assaulted by them, and the person literally has DNA inside their body that correlates with your client's DNA, guess what? It doesn't make a fucking difference what dumbass defense you're gonna make. The motherfucker is guilty. Or in this case, the motherfuckers are guilty. I'm all for a fair trial, but when the trial's a slam dunk for the persecution, you might as well just pack up a briefcase and say, sorry, I did what I could, fuck you. Videos of the first and third assaults were recorded and shared by the assailants to contacts via WhatsApp, but the videos were deleted before the case could be heard in court. Well, the fact is, people still say the videos were present, though. Witnesses who did see the footage before deletion did testify it depicted a clear case of assault, with nothing that the girl had been holding in her hands over her head in a protective position. Why in the fuck are these people walking the streets? Why are they walking the streets? If you can confirm guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, why the hell are they walking the street after? During the trial, the victim who now suffers from PTSD as a result of the night of abuse, was called upon to speak about what happened to her. While she recounted her horrific ordeal, the men showed no signs of remorse, and at least one said to have almost fallen asleep during proceedings. I hope that asshole dies. I hope that asshole gets his head taken off. Or that someone just gets like a fucking handsaw and just starts disassembling him joint by joint, working from his toes to his fingers to his hands to his legs. And they just keep him alive long enough so that he feels every fucking bit of it. I don't care what people are gonna fucking say about me saying this. This is fucking horrendous. No one deserves to go through what this fucking teenager went through. And worst of all, is that the people that did it got a soft touch approach because of where they come from, because apparently that somehow is supposed to mean they somehow don't know right from wrong. However, despite DNA and WhatsApp evidence, 8 of the 9 men convicted walked free with probation and spent no time in prison at all. Okay, so let me get this straight. You can do one of the most horrendous fucking things in the world to somebody and walk away with probation, despite evidence being available that confirms your involvement beyond a reasonable doubt. Way to go, Germany. No wonder you're always fucking things up. Seriously, the only good thing you assholes ever made was the Glock. The 9th was sentenced to 2 years and 9 months in prison without parole. Oh wow, 2 years. Fan-fucking-tastic. Because we all know 2 years in prison is gonna undo the fucking destruction this person went psychologically. Because we all know that this young lady is going to miraculously get over this shit in 2 years and 9 months, huh? Fuck all of you. Fuck all of the people responsible for that fucking sentencing. This guy deserved death, nothing less. Same thing with the other assholes, they walk out of there. Seriously. You let these assholes walk out of there with probation. What would they have had to have done to get life in prison, you dumb pieces of shit? What would they have had to have done to deserve life in prison if not death? Would they have had to have filmed themselves hacking her to pieces and then carrying those pieces around in a wagon to get the point across these people are not allowed to be walking the streets? Would that have been the fucking clencher for you assholes? Would that have been what decided it all? Is that they were just if they were just like brutally butchering her in the street at that point, would that have been the fucking thing that got the message across? These are people that should not be walking the streets. I mean, they have the same fucking problem in England. People come over, they immigrate there, many of them honest, hardworking people that genuinely just want to live their lives. No problem with those guys. But the problem is, for every dozen of those good people that just want to work hard and live their lives in a new place where they won't be persecuted, there's like 5 or 6 assholes that decide that they want to form gangs where they assault people and then do horrendous things to them because their culture more or less demands it of them to feel like they're men. Because they're useless subhuman pieces of garbage otherwise. This is so fucked up. This case caused outrage in Germany, both for the brutality of the assault itself and the lenient sentences given to the rapist as a result. One of the men had his identity and phone number circulated on Snapchat by furious sleuths. Good! I hope he gets dragged into the street and stabbed to death! I hope they do what those Indian women did to that one fucking assaulter who had like a series of doing it to like over 50 women, where they just drag him into the streets, chop off his junk, and then stab him and pelt him with pepper repeatedly. It's what he fucking deserves. Same thing with the other assholes that were allowed to walk free. You're basically just telling the victim that what she went through doesn't matter to you. That's what you're telling the victim. You wonder why it is people don't want to talk to law enforcement is because shit like this happens. And they realize that what happens to them is only relevant if someone can use it to posture about their bullshit. Angered by the news of the case, a 20-year-old woman from Hamburg messaged the number through WhatsApp. The unnamed woman called him a dishonorable rapist pig and a disgusting miscarriage. She added, "Aren't you ashamed when you look in the mirror?" Wow, she said things that anyone would have fucking said, looking at the brutality of the crime he committed against someone that would not have ever deserved it. What a fucking surprise that people are distraught and upset and fucking outraged. Like, this shit wouldn't have happened in the United States. Do you want to know why? Because the moment they were able to confirm guilt for all the motherfuckers involved, or even suggest probable cause for the last two that didn't do it directly, that would have been enough for every one of them to get consecutive life sentences. And that's if the prison inmates wouldn't decide to take care of business themselves. You know, by bashing their heads in with a dumbbell, or crushing their skull with a book, or shanking them in the fucking shower. Seriously, send these assholes over to a United States prison filled with dads who can't see their children, and see how quickly they fucking live. See how long they'll make it, when they're surrounded by men that aren't afraid to do what should have been done. Like, this reminds me of that fucking quote. Evil prevails when good men stand by and do nothing, and this is the exact definition of that. Because it was literally men standing by and doing nothing, or doing the bare minimum or below the bare minimum, because they decided that their laws were needed to be just enough to seem like they gave a shit enough to look at it and then shove it away when they realized it wasn't a problem to them personally. Seriously, I want to see the people in charge of handing down that sentence. And I would like to pose a question to them, for example. I would like to pose a fucking question to them. If that had been your daughter, your granddaughter, your niece, your sister, a friend of yours, your daughter, someone that you love dearly, who went through all fucking that. Could you imagine? Could you fucking imagine not feeling that way, not being disgusted and abhorred and destroyed when you realize that someone you love and care about has been through one of the worst things a person can ever fucking experience? Wouldn't you then be able to sit there and look at the people persecuting someone for lambasting them for the horrible shit they did to your relative? Would you be able to sit there and complain that someone called them horrendous things for doing something that's beyond unfucking forgivable? Or would you be able to say, I understand why you're saying this, and realistically, I don't care that you've said this, because you're saying it for a reason that makes sense? Seriously, why is it that the person that commits a horrible crime gets less time than the person who actively is just commentating about the horrendous actions the person participated in? The woman has been convicted and sentenced to a weekend in prison for her remarks, meaning that she will have to spend more time in jail than the 8 to 9 rapists. In court, the woman apologized for her remarks. She shouldn't have to fucking apologize. You shouldn't have to fucking apologize when you say someone did something fucked up and horrendous. You should not have to sit there and capitulate to a piece of shit that goes out of their way to rape a kid, and then you have to sit there and say, I'm so sorry I hurt your feelings for the horrible shit you did. Do you know what I would have done if someone had dragged me into court over that? I would have said, go fuck yourself. Me saying mean things is the least of his fucking concerns. You're basically just telling the people that have been affected by shit like this that what happened to them is less relevant than the hurt feelings of a rapist. That's what it is. You're basically just communicating that you don't give a shit about the victim because you're more concerned about protecting the feelings of the person who victimized them. And yet you're trying to argue that people feel bad for that because they just have to, because of some dumbass speech laws that were made up by pussies. Saying she acted out of a reflex upon hearing the sickening details of the case. It's at that point, that's not a reflex. That is justified vindication for the people that were outraged by this bullshit. That should not be a reflex. That is a justifiable response to hearing something so fucking horrific. But according to Hamburger Adenblatt, this woman is not the only person who could be facing a conviction for insulting the rapist. Authorities in Hamburg reportedly for 140 people for offenses related to issuing insults, threats, or other deterrent towards the Stan Park predators. Who gives a fuck about how those assholes feel? So you're basically just saying, if I call a child molester a piece of shit, it means that in Germany, I can go to prison for that for a weekend. For no real reason other than just saying words. but they are allowed to spend a very, very, very short sentence for doing one of the worst things that will destroy this person that suffered it possibly for the rest of their life. Right. All I'm going to say, now that I'm ready to wrap this up, is fuck the people that did this crime. Fuck the people that defended them. Fuck the weak-ass fucking language laws that they more or less act like a fucking pat on the ass every time you do something fucking horrendous. And fuck anybody, and I do mean anybody, that would ever try to tell me, for example, that hating the people that committed this horrendous act of hurting this child are somehow they're like misunderstood or that they're not doing anything wrong. Shut the fuck up, okay? Anyone that's ever going to tell me that I'm wrong for hating the people that did this to this teenager, shut the fuck up, okay? You don't know shit. You never will. If you're trying to defend these 9 motherfuckers who did this crime, you're the same pieces of shit that would probably do this crime yourself, and I hope you die horribly and painfully. All I'm gonna say is, fuck Germany's law enforcement for this really shitty enforcement of a half-assed measure to persecute rapists. My heart goes out to the victims and the people who have survived, who have more or less had to see their offender getting less time than anyone would realistically deserve. And for that, I'm just gonna get the fuck out of here.